I'm going to give you 5 must-read books for that retirement you've been planning for. The one you've been planning for the last 30 to 40 years.
Joe knows taxes.
Joe knows the market.
Joe knows Social Security.
Joe knows income planning.
Joe knows pickleball? No.
This is Joe Knows Retirement.
And so the first book on our list is what's called The New Retirementality. And the New Retirementality is all about understanding what is retirement going to look like. Remember, retirement is not something you've thought about or planned for. Maybe you've thought about it. You've probably thought about it very, very, very much so, but it's not something you've been doing. And so it's going to be a new phase of life. You're going to go from doing something for 30, 40 years to now to go from having nothing to do. And so what this book talks about is mostly about having a purpose when you do retire. And so for some people, that may mean continue working. Maybe purpose for them is I enjoy working. I enjoy being surrounded by community. And so in order to have that purpose, I'm going to not retire. I'm going to continue working. For some people, it may be, hey, I'm going to stop working my full-time job, but I'm going to pick up a part-time job so I can still have that engagement. The income is nice. And maybe they just get purpose from being productive in that way. Or some people may say, my purpose is golfing every day. And for some people that may be the case, but typically what we see is that they get about 3, 6 months, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, and they go, okay, I can't golf every day. That doesn't give me that sense of purpose that I need to really live that fruitful retirement there. So what we try to encourage people of, and what it talks about in that book is, hey, we need to have a plan when we get to retirement. What is it actually going to look like? Are we going to retire to a life of leisure? If so, that's not always proven to be successful. Typically, if that's the case, life expectancy may decrease. You may get a little boring, is what some people will joke around about. And so, remember that, you got to have a plan. That may be volunteering. It may be working part-time, like I mentioned. It may be just continuing to work throughout retirement, or things to consider there. And I think the biggest purpose, thing, whatever you decide, I'm all for retirement, but I'm also all for having a purpose if you do retire. And what is that going to look like? So that book does a really good job of getting you to brainstorm and really think about a phase of life that you've never been to and really get you to start thinking, what do you want it to be? So those are some of the big things with that book of The New Retirementality. It's by Mitch Anthony, and so I'd highly encourage you to read that book if that's something that intrigues you. The next book on the list is called Splitting Heirs, and that's by another financial advisor named Ron Blue. And so Ron Blue has been a mentor of mine, and he's an awesome guy, and the whole book is about what do we do with our money when we pass away. And so you may think, well, that's a long ways off. Yeah, and it may be, but it also could be tomorrow. And so we need to make sure we have a plan of what are we going to do with our money. And I would also encourage you, maybe it's a long way off, but maybe you don't want to leave any money behind, and that may change your plans today of how you're going to do that. Or maybe you do want to leave a lot of money behind, and that may be the change of your plans. And so this does a really good job, just like the first book I told you about, of just referencing and really getting you to brainstorm of like, what does it look like to leave behind money? And a lot of people think, well, I'll just leave the money behind to my kids. And for most people, that could be good. But what if your kids can't manage money? Or what if your kids are left $1 million and now what are they going to do with it? And there's definitely studies out there that show that if you leave an inheritance behind, the majority of times that money is spent. And if you don't believe me, go ask someone who got an inheritance, and I guarantee they used it for home improvement. They used it to go buy something. Most of the time it's not saved. It's just spent right away because it's found money. It's just like the lottery, right? You win the lottery, and what happens? Well, you kind of get miserable because everyone wants to be your friend, and you didn't earn it. And so you almost feel guilty in some cases. So some people would argue and say that, well, no, that's not the case. If I won the lottery, I'd be so much happier. And hey, you could be, if you're good and frugal with the money. For example, if I won the lottery, I feel like I'd be very excited because I wouldn't spend a dime of it. I'd give it all to charities, right? Because I would just feel so guilty, but I'd get a lot of joy out of giving that amount of money to charity, right? So I don't know your situation, but I'm just telling you what most people would do. And it's a very real thing because it's just found money. You never earned it. When we earn money, we think of it differently than if we just found it on the ground there. If you find $20 on the ground, you're probably thinking, oh, wow, what can I spend this on now? You're not going to think about how do I put it in my bank account, right? So that book just does a really good job of putting that kind of thing in perspective. But then also thinking about like, hey, Do we want to leave our money to something beside our kids? Is it a charity? Is it an organization? Is it a church? Should we spend our money now? Maybe that will give us some more value if we just spend our money now on goals that we have. So does a really good job of giving you things to think about. Again, with that book, when you read that book, I would not try to think that the book is trying to encourage you to do something. It's your money. You need to do what you want to do. But just think of what they're saying and think, hey, is that what I want to do or is that what I'm not? So again, just to give you ideas. So the next book, which, the Splitting Heirs book is all about how do we be the best stewards of our money. This next book's a little different. This next book is called Die with Zero. And with this book, it's all about how do we spend every last dollar that we have? How do we make sure that last dollar bounces back when we pass away? And so if that's your goal, then this book is going to be more so for you. So if you say, I don't want to give the money to the charities, I don't want to give the money to the kids, I just want to spend it and I want to enjoy it. Well, this is a good book to encourage you to do so. And with a lot of our clients, we may not encourage them to die with zero. That's pretty extreme. But we do have to try to urge them and encourage them that, hey, it is okay to spend money. If you go on that trip, if you go buy that new car, if you do the home improvements, if you get the windows, it's not going to affect your financial goals. You'll actually be in a really good spot even if you do that. And your chances of success will still be 90, 95, 100%. And so that book will really open your mind and really start to switch that saving mindset that you've had all the years up the mountain as we explain it, to now when you come down the mountain, it's time to spend that money. It's time to enjoy it. And so that book will help you really get you to understand that like experience too are really good things. Like spending money on experiences that may give you more joy in retirement, may have you live a longer retirement, are things to think about with that book there. The next book on my list is The Power of Zero. And so if you're more into the planning side of retirement, not so much the feel side like the other books we've talked about, then this book is going to be for you. So this book is all about how do you pay $0 in federal taxes throughout your retirement. And the way you do that is by smart planning. So this is something that we implement with a lot of our clients, is this Power of Zero concept is, hey, if we can start to do tax planning now and start to pay some of those taxes, especially on those like tax deferred investments that you saved all these years. Because remember, when you take out money from that tax deferred investment, what happens? You got to pay taxes. And so maybe something we do with that money is we can start paying that tax on it now versus later, because tax rates may be lower now if you expect tax rates to go up like most people. But also, hey, if the money hasn't grown yet and it's expected to grow over the years, let's pay the tax on a lower amount versus later in our later years. And so that's kind of the idea, and really getting you to understand that there's something called the standard deduction. And if you take out a certain amount of money up to the standard deduction, you'll pay $0 in taxes. So it's all about strategically being able to take distributions out from your investments, but keep it under that standard deduction so the IRS doesn't see that you have a ton of income, and you can take from tax-free vehicles to make sure that you can live that tax-free retirement, is how we often coin it. And so that book is a really good one to understand not only how to live that tax-free retirement, but also understanding like the current economic times we have. Our country's in $1 trillion of debt, and where do we expect things to go from experts? And so not only is there a book, but there's also a documentary that we often encourage people to watch. You can watch it here on YouTube for about $4, and unless they raised the price since the last time I saw it. But it just does a good job of getting you to think about, where are we at as an economy and where do we expect to go? And so that's a book that we recommend to a lot of people. The last book I have for you, in my mind, it's the most important book. It's the best book ever written. And I'm smiling because it's my book. It's the I Hate Taxes book. And so if you haven't read the I Hate Taxes book, you're doing your retirement a big disservice. So I had to include that in the top 5 here. It's probably number 1 if I really had to pick. I know I'm a little biased, but in my opinion, it should be number 1. So with this book, it's all about lowering your taxes and owning your retirement. So just like The Power of Zero, we cover a lot of similar type of concepts there. The only difference is we go a little more in detail with specific strategies and planning ideas to making sure you're planning for that. So, Power of Zero is really going to open your eyes. The I Hate Taxes is really going to open it up. And I've wrote that in a way to make it really simple and really easy to understand, to make sure that regardless of your situation, there's going to be strategies in there to make sure you're saving the money there. And that book is mostly for people who have been a diligent saver, who have saved more. Remember, the more money you save, the more advanced your planning strategies need to be. And so that book was specifically written for those types of people who have been diligent savers. So again, probably the number one book in the entire country, if you ask me. But I would highly encourage you to read that if you also hate taxes. And remember, I don't necessarily hate taxes. It's just a fun, catchy title. But I do very much so question if our government's the best steward of all of our tax-paying dollars. I agree with some of the stuff we spend money on. I don't know if I agree with everything. And so if that's the case, I want to have more control of my retirement, and I want to choose how much tax I pay by just following what the tax code says. So the tax code is a book they've given us to make sure we don't pay more than our fair share. And so that's ultimately what we're trying to talk about with that book. So with that book specifically, if you actually look in the link below, or in the description below, there's a link that you can click on, and you can actually get a free copy of that book. And so fill out your information, you'll get to a landing page there, and we'll actually give you a free copy of that to making sure that you can live that lower tax retirement and really have more control there. So there are the 5 books that I recommend that retirees read, and hopefully that can be helpful for you. Hopefully that can give you some intellect to live that retirement that you wish for.
Since we do not know your specific situation, none of this information can serve as tax, legal, insurance, or financial advice and may be outdated or inaccurate. The information comes from sources believed to be reliable but cannot be guaranteed. This content is prepared for educational purposes only. If you need advice, please contact a qualified CPA, attorney, insurance agent, financial advisor, or the appropriate professional for the subject you would like help with. Peak Retirement Planning, Inc. is an Ohio-based registered investment advisor and able to offer advisory services in Ohio and in other states where registered or exempt from registration.